Hi everyone, I want to give my final feedback for the PTR with suggestions for every single class, for most of the new builds and even some old ones, and also some general ideas that I propose for maybe the future for next season or something. So I have a lot of stuff to share. I've played the PTR a lot. It has been going for almost a month and I've been playing almost every night between like 3 to 8 hours. I have played a lot of different builds here, and probably in total like around 50 builds or so. So I have a lot more videos to make as well. I have a lot more stuff to share, but here I want to talk about what I think is good, how the changes are, and what I would suggest. So I go class by class, and in the end we have some general stuff too. I try to keep it short for all of these points. I don't want to go like for a whole hour or so, but I guess it will be quite a lot of stuff. So let's go. So let's start with the Witch Doctor, Zombie Bears. So that's like one of the new builds, I guess, because it has not really been any good at all before that. It got heavy buffs, and well, it is still a little bit too weak. So if you want to push, you can. It goes up to like 130, 135 top end. It's probably like around 10 tiers behind Mundunugu, which is the meta for Witch Doctor right now. And well, Zombie Bears gives you like a little bit of another play style if you like that. But I believe it's still a bit too weak. It's still a bit too clunky. It can definitely boost it by like ×2 or ×3. We have the offhand for that. That can easily be tweaked a little bit, I guess. So that would be nice. But just in general, the bear's getting stuck everywhere. Yeah, this is kind of a problem. So when you have narrow spaces, when you have bad maps, you can't play the build properly. And well, you lose most of your damage. And you also can't really focus it. I mean, it kind of goes with the build, so it has like a nice, it's like its own identity. So this is okay that, have this huge stampede, but the bears getting stuck everywhere is kind of bad. So if the collision could be removed, that would be great. And that would buff the build a little bit and maybe add more bears because, well, it's quite fun. Chicken, I tried this. It's not really good for anything. So Mundunugu is extremely good for the 16, for bounties, for pushing too. It's like the all-around build that Witch Doctor needed when it came out, and we don't really have any alternatives. Neither with the bears, neither with the chicken. It's just kind of like a flavor type of thing. Chicken is not going to be used for any kind of meta build. It's just not good enough. But yeah, like they added like some auto chickens that spawn every second. They basically do nothing. And also like the big issue is the small radius and the long cooldown. So you want to go chicken, you want to explode immediately, and then you want to blow up the entire screen because you have like stray enemies, you have shielding elites, you don't hit everything, and it's kind of hard to clear stuff consistently. While if Mundunugu just rush through and everything dies instantly, automatically from the Manitou. So it has no competition, and chicken definitely is not good enough for that. So I think more chickens, maybe more AoE, or maybe just release extra chickens on the explosion, because this is what you want to do. You want to explode as fast as possible, and then you want to get extra chickens. You don't want to stay in the chicken form just to get like some other small chickens that almost do nothing. For the other builds, for Gargs and Firebats is something I tried. Zuni I wanted to, but I didn't get around to do it. Zuni is probably the most fun here. And well, Firebats is just horrible to play anyway, but yeah, it could be buffed anyway. Like all these could be buffed here. Gargs could be like a nice like pet speed farming build, or maybe some kind of like pushing build. I guess the top end potential is somewhere at like 130, so also quite far behind. So all of these could be buffed a bit, and maybe Jade too actually, which I forgot to add here. And well, one general thing, the Lacumba and Sacred Harvester combo should be looked at, because yeah, Witch Doctor is super squishy and it has no CC immunity. So I think this could be looked into, and maybe it could, yeah, this could be changed a bit. Give like more baseline toughness to Soul Harvest, for example. Everybody uses Soul Harvest anyway on Witch Doctor because it gives so many other benefits. So why not just add some damage reduction there, and then you can reduce the Lacumba effect or the Sacred Harvester effect. Next up we have the Crusader here. So I tried the Fawn's Bomb, I also made a guide for this already. It's a really strong build, even post nerf, so don't let yourselves be fooled. This is insane, and it's like one of the top builds in the game. I think the whole playstyle is pretty cool, it's pretty unique, so nothing really to say for that. It's not going to be used in groups anymore, but well, it's okay because we still have Heaven's Fury, so this is the #1 Riftgun killer by far. And well, after Season 22, this is actually going to be one of the best builds in the game, because the Season 22 buff is extremely weak for the Fallen Spawn Crusader, and for most of the other top builds, especially Necros, but also like the Monk with Tempest Rush, but also the Heaven's Fury with the Norvald set. It's extremely strong for most other builds. So post Season 22, this is going to be the build for Crusader, and probably like one of the best in the game too. Full Invoker, I tried this. It's actually pretty decent for speed farming now. It's also a really good Rift Guardian killer, especially non-season or post-season 22. Again, Season 22 buff does almost nothing for Invoker. So yeah, it has some advantages, especially if you want to push on non-season. You have almost guaranteed Stricken stacking, so this is pretty nice. And just in general, I feel like Invoker's on a pretty good spot. So they nerfed their 2-piece bonus, they buffed the 6-piece bonus, and that actually gave us kind of like a viable alternative to play. So definitely something to try out if you like very simplistic builds, essentially just left-clicking stuff to death. And it's like single target, you're just going from elite to elite, and that's it. So pretty straightforward. I don't like it very much, but it has its place, and it's not bad. So overall, I think I would not really change anything here. This is okay. Hammerden, I tried this. Yeah, single target is horrible, especially in Season 22. Again, you have Norvald set and you give up the Guard of Johanna, which makes it so that you have even less single target damage compared to your overall damage. And the Faithful Memory needs to be changed. So Faithful Memory gives you a big damage bonus of 80% per target hit, up to 10 stacks. So when you hit only one target, you get 80% bonus, which is almost nothing compared to like the full bonus of, you know, doing 800% bonus. So this should be changed to either reduce the targets, increase the amount, or simply straight up just give you the same bonus every time. And in general, it could be bumped up a bit. So ×2 or ×3, it's just too weak. But otherwise, Hammerden, I feel, has like a pretty unique and fun playstyle. And if, you know, the single target was fixed, and a bit of a buff could definitely give us another viable alternative here. Roland's, also, I really like the sweep actually. It's really fun to play around. You have very high mobility, very tanky. In Season 22 especially, you have the Norvald set, so this is actually pretty good, up to 140 I think. So it's probably the third best Crusader build after Thorn's Bomb and Heaven's Fury. And well, after Season 22 it's going to be very weak again, because Norvald's set is huge for this. And well, another issue is there is no legendary gems really, but it's also like a more general topic, I guess. So many builds, especially farming builds, actually lack decent third options, because well, for pushing you can kind of justify something like an esoteric in most cases to you know, get more out of the defense, and then basically increase your offensive capabilities by, you know, stacking more monsters together. But especially for speed farming, you have many builds that don't have good gems. So you have to go with something like Gogok as a DPS gem that gives you 50% attack speed, which obviously is horrible compared to something like what a Trap or a Zaze can give you. But when you play like a melee build and you don't need Stricken, and you don't need the cooldown from Gogok, then well, you simply don't have options really. So this is a thing to look at, but just in general. But here I felt like this was worth mentioning, because even for pushing you don't really have a good option here. And I think it would be cool to have Shield Bash come back as well. With Fidelity Ascended is a really cool mechanic where you shield glare and you deal damage based on your last 5 shield bashes. So I think this could see like a heavy buff, and then you can have like kind of like a nuke playstyle where you do like very heavy like single target damage with Shield Bash, and then you shield glare once in a while for like a big AoE burst. I think something like this would be very fun. So it's definitely something to look at for the future. Wizard is next here. We have the Twister Wizard, so this is like the biggest new rework here. So yeah, it has very high push potential, I believe. It's probably going to be the best build for Wizard, one of the best builds in the game. I tried it and I easily cleared a 120, and this was with bad gameplay with super low end setup, and it definitely feels comparable to something like Bone Spear in power. And I believe that there's lots of little tricks to figure out still. Especially you can like stack twisters in different spots, and you can refresh the timers. So you can have, instead of only one big twister, you can have like, you know, 2 or 3 or even 4 like camps of twisters that you like cycle and never let run out. So there's definitely some stuff involved here. Informant, probably it can't be played because it's way too laggy. So it's something to look at maybe. Reduce the tick rate again might be an option. Maybe increase the number of twisters you can stack into one, or just make it, one huge twister. Because the thing is with this like juggling between different camps is it's extremely difficult to do optimally, which on the one hand, gives it like a really high skill cap, but on the other hand also will make it extremely unfriendly to try to learn or play the build for the more casual players. So I believe a good way to solve that would be to make the twisters basically degenerate over time. So when you cast them into one and it keeps growing, that after I think it's a 6-second duration for each twister, basically every twister has its own timer, so that it kind of like decreases in power again over time instead of like disappearing completely all at once. Because right now you just stack up the 4 twisters in one, and then you just refresh it once every 6 seconds. So this could be a way to solve that, and then maybe increase the power of the build a bit. So that would be okay. Maybe make it like stack up to like 8 twisters into one. I don't know. Personally, I would also like to see channeling completely removed from the build, but I guess that's not happening because then we wouldn't have any channeling builds anymore, and I guess the digital rework is what it is. But yeah, for me, twisters would be really cool if they were actually moving. So right now the strategy is to have Wicked Wind, and you basically have the twisters standing in place, and you just keep building them up, and you channel into those twisters. I think it would be amazing if they were moving again. For example, Valfix Rebuke could be made so that it reduces the movement speed of the twisters in addition to giving the damage, and instead of making them go in a straight line. So like this, you would have the option to also do like the randomized twister movement, but not to like such a punishing degree as it is now. Like right now they just fly away and they're gone really fast. So this is why you have to use the Wicked Wind rune. But with this, it could be it could keep its identity of the random twisters, while still making it a bit more consistent, and also giving you the option to play either the random runes or the consistent Wicked Wind. Frozen Orb. Frozen Orb is overall really good spot, I think, especially Season 22, you have the Death Wish, so that makes it strong, but afterwards it's going to be weak. Just Death Wish in general is an issue here, and well, I think it's going to be probably the main farming build. It's pretty good for speed farming, it's okay for the 16 and bounties, definitely one of the better options for Wizard. And I think it could still be buffed a bit here, because compared to the Twisters or the Hydras, I don't think it's going to compete for the pushing here. And the Hydra Wizard. So Hydra Wizard is already really strong. It's like one of the best builds in the game. And in Season 22, you basically have almost the same damage plus Death Wish. So it is going to be probably going up to 150 if people really try, or very close to 150. So this could be the strongest build here for Wizard, and one of the best in the game. The problem is we have to play LOD Mammoth Hydra and not the new set. So the new set didn't get buffed enough. The Mammoth Hydra is simply superior in DPS, especially once you stack up this ground effect a bit, and I believe that should be changed. If you play Hydra, we should have the option to play the set. We have the Frost Hydras there, which are nice, and they're more consistent, they're more fun to play with. They kind of go along with the theme of like the Frost Nova cast from the Hydras. So I believe that it's kind of like a wasted opportunity here to not buff the set a bit more. Right now, I believe the set is at least like 2 to 3 tiers too weak to compete with the LOD Mammoth Hydra. So we're looking at like something like a plus 50% DPS buff or so that is needed to bring them closer together. And then we could play the set, which I believe overall is fine. The playstyle is fine. And well, just in Season 22, we have the Death Wish that makes it a bit clunky. But overall, I really like the active playstyle now from the Hydra. So that's pretty cool. Wizard in general, yeah, Death Wish, yeah, something needs to happen there. I already made a video specific about this, so I'm not going to reiterate everything. But in Season 22, yeah, every build has it, because you can stutter step and activate the Death Wish bonus, and then do another cast and stutter step. In the future, this has to be reworked, make it like a disintegration or disintegrate item or an arcane torrent item, I don't know. But just leave it out of all the other builds, please. In general, we also need more mobility. So we could make teleport like an option, something like that gives you, like, for example, a ring that prevents you from using one of the Halo rings, and then you can use teleport instead for like a smaller benefit, something like 50% damage reduction after teleport, or 60% instead of the 80% from Karini. so that you can't stack the damage reductions, but you have an option to replace the armor for teleport. I think that would be amazing. This is what is needed, because overall all wizard builds are super clunky, especially in pushing. First of all, teleport is, you know, extremely weak for mobility skill, and on top of that, it has a long cooldown, and yeah, it's not even used in those pushing builds. So like this, we have an option to get it back in. And just in general, also Archon builds, reverse Archon builds, the Shimizu. So this is like the same fate for every build. When you have really high Paragon, you're tanky enough because you just stack more Vitality. More Vitality means bigger shields, and well, all wizard builds rely on enemies never getting through your shield. So high Paragon players are disproportionately benefited on wizard class. And this makes it extremely casual, unfriendly. It makes it so that, you know, you can't really push anything on wizard to the same degree that you could do on other classes. So just some stuff in general to look at here. And well, I'm really sad that Meteor is so weak. I tried Meteor and I was doing like 15 tiers below some of the other builds. So I think like the absolute top end potential for some Meteor builds are probably like 125. There's some okay T16 version, but otherwise I think we need something for this in the future too. So here's a Necro. Bone Spear, overall looking really cool. I really like the build. I already played it in Season 21. I believe it's in a very good spot now. Season 22, the cube bonus is really strong for this because, well, it's a Necromancer. You get a Scythe, so every Necromancer gets buffed by a lot. I think in the terms of like overall like Necromancer balance, it's gonna be fine even after Season 22. For other purposes, after Season 22, I guess we have Witch Doctor again for like 4-man. And I guess we stay with rats too for the speed farming. One thing that I wish for here is an indicator for when your simulacrums die, or some kind of like effect or some UI element, I don't know, because it does happen quite frequently actually that you take lethal damage, your simulacrums sacrifice themselves to save you, and you don't notice that they are dead, and then you just die from the next hit anyway, even though you would have a chance to actually press the button and revive them. So I think this would be amazing. I mean, right like this, it's kind of like, you know, it benefits the experienced players, so it's like a skill component of the build, I guess. But in general, I believe this could be a bit more visible so that you can actually react to it instead of just die immediately. Because like this whole mechanic is pretty useless with like some Simulacrums sacrificing themselves when, well, you just die anyway. And here, Rats, well, Rats is going to be by far the best XP meta in Season 22. And I would like to see a nerf here. I don't think that, you know, Rats should stay at the top for all times. We have Bone Spear being kind of like a decent alternative, which is also Necro, but okay. And then we have basically nothing for a while, and then there's like God's Beat somewhere, and then we have nothing for a while again, and then there's like Whirlwind or a Charge Barb or something. So this is what it looks like. And I believe that Rats are simply too good right now. They're like the strongest Rats ever, and yeah, some suggestions here. You could reduce the damage of the Singularity Rune, the Devour Chest, the duration, the maximum number of mages. I don't know, some stuff. The Reaper's Wraps change didn't really do much because you don't have any issue keeping up your mages like this. So for the Barb, we have Leapquake. Leapquake is really fun, so I tried this out. It's really cool. And they also made the weapon have a legendary affix now that enables actually 3 different variations of builds. So you can do full Earthquake, you can do a mix of Avalanche, or you can even do like basically no leap or like very little leaping, and you just attack a lot. So there's a setup. I didn't get to try it actually, but I believe could actually be even better than the leaping. So yeah, for overall the build is still a bit too weak though. So like 5 to 7 tiers behind Whirlwind, and Whirlwind is already like the weakest top build in the game. So if you count all classes, Barbarian is the weakest. So they can definitely buff Leapquake by like, you know, ×2, ×3. Maybe buff Frenzy a bit too would be amazing. And yeah, just in general, Leapquake is really cool, so I would like to see this being at least close to the meta, so that you can comfortably you know, choose this over Whirlwind if you like. So for the Monk, we have Uliana, the really big hype, I guess. So I tried this extensively, and it is pretty decent. In Season 22, you have the option to play Shenlongs, and that makes it pretty good. You can do speed farming at an okay level, and then pushing is also not bad. So I think up to 140 or so is quite doable. and they also added a 77% damage reduction here. So this opens up some of the possibilities and boosts the build a bit, but it's not enough to really compete with Tempest Rush. Tempest Rush is at least 5 tiers stronger, and we can definitely bump up the Monk here again by like ×2, I'd say. I think also what would be nice to change the single target damage a bit. So I have some suggestions here because, well, Rift Guardians are horrible on Oleana. Even in speed farming, I could already feel that I was not really doing damage on single target. And when you go to like pushing tiers, you probably have, you know, like 5, 6, 7 minute Rift Guardian fights, and it's just going to be frustrating. So here are some suggestions. You know, we could do more damage against fewer targets, or we could get more Stricken stacks, or we could get a cooldown reset on 7-sided strike, or just deal like double damage to the target that the AP was applied to. So maybe something like this. But yeah, just we need something for this, and then maybe a small buff on top of this. So finally, the Demon Hunter. There was no changes for Demon Hunter at all, which actually was kind of weird to me, but okay. So well, I guess overall we need to nerf some of the top builds, and that includes God Demon Hunter, and then, you know, eventually also the Thorns Bomb Crusader, and, you know, maybe some Necro build or so. But for now, well, with the current season 22 meta, God is fine because Demon Hunter doesn't get much from the 4th cube slot. So compared to something like Necromancer or Crusader, the differences between like non-season and season are much smaller here. So it's okay, but overall, probably the God should be nerfed a bit after season 22, when all the other builds drop down a bit. And this could be done by reducing the maximum number of pierces. So right now it's uncapped. So you have like a big pull and you pierce 50 times and the damage like goes to infinity. You have missile dampeners that makes it even more crazy. And I believe if you have something like maximum 20 pierces, you will not notice it at all when you're farming, like, you know, your GR 105s or GR 110s or so. But it will kind of like reduce the overall impact of fishing, of high density, of missile dampeners a little bit, and probably bring down the build by, you know, like 2-3 tiers or so if you have something like a maximum 20 pierces cap. So this is something to consider for the future. Otherwise, I will leave the build unchanged because, well, it feels amazing to play. It is fast. It is, you know, like a really nice farming build. A lot of people like it. So this is why I want to have such a nerf and not a nerf to the overall damage, because that would eventually, you know, kill the build for any kind of like group or even solo pushing. If it gets heavily nerfed on like the 6-piece bonus, for example. So here's my suggestion that is like, you know, only impactful on the higher end and not really doing much on most people's like gameplay. And for the other sets, yeah, basically everything else is too weak. So Impale, Multi, Marauder, Natalia, Rain of Vengeance, Fan of Knives, everything could be buffed by at least ×2, I'd say, like straight up. And yeah, Spike Traps. I would really like to see some Spike Traps. So that's kind of like my wish list here for the future. I already made some suggestions a long time ago, so I would really like to see some kind of like a viable Spike Trap build. And it was such an amazing skill to play with in vanilla Diablo, and, well, bring it back, please. And finally, in general, talking about the Shadow Clones quickly, so they were more streamlined now. It seems like they are overall, yeah, much more balanced. So I didn't really get to test it with all classes in very different situations, but it seems okay for what I can tell. So if you have any experience with this yourself, let me know, because that would be interesting to find out. But what is happening is they also work at level 1 now. So I showed my 1 to 17 leveling session on the PTR. So this is pretty cool. So you can actually go, you know, blast with the Shadow Clones right away when you start the season. It's going to be one of the top leveling strategies, especially for solo players, I believe. You can probably do something like 1 hour, 1 to 70 if you practice this a bit. So it can be quite nice. A few bugs remain, so I don't know why, but some people keep spawning Shadow Clones from other classes for some reason. It would be quite funny anyway to keep it as a future, I guess, but yeah, maybe something to look at. And also sometimes they don't really seem to do anything for a while until they reach you, or like when they're getting stuck or so, they don't really do anything. So that happened to me a few times. But overall, I think the Shadow Clones are in a good spot. They help especially the farming and the solo players, and also like on a more casual push end, I guess. It's pretty nice in like the 100 to 120 range. T16, you can wear canes now on every build, and just have the Shadow Clone kill something when you spawn one. So that's pretty nice. And yeah, it doesn't really do much for the pushing. So yeah, but I think it's a bit sad that you can't really strategize around them for the high end. It's also good because, you know, it keeps everything as it is. You don't really care about the shadow clones when you're doing like a proper, you know, 140 plus push, and you just click the panels as you would otherwise do normally anyway. So that's about it. And well, for some general updates here, so UI, quality of life, we need a shield indicator. So wizard builds, especially every single wizard build is about shields. There's no wizard build that doesn't have shields. So a whole class, essentially, we have most of the 16 builds, even many speedfinding builds have Molten Wildebeest and Squirts, so they also use shields. We don't see the shields. We have the Demon Hunter builds, the Fortress Ballista, there's Natalia, Fan of Knives, there's the God DH that also uses Fortress Ballista. So this is a really big thing here. So we need something, and I believe that should happen, especially for this season, because Wizard is a bit of hype right now. And well, just in general, this is like a really missing feature here. Same goes for the COE indicator for parties. So we can see some party buffs already. We can even see some personal buffs of party members already. So I don't see why we couldn't add the COE here. That would help immensely for especially random parties, for like, you know, parties without voice communication, because COE is like the #1 mechanic to play around in groups in higher tiers, and well, not being able to see it and then relying on tools outside of the game is not great. So there is a website for this that can kind of count the COE for you, but you need a second screen for that, and if people don't have that, well, tough luck, I guess. And if you don't rely on voice communication, well, tough luck for you too. So this is an issue, and we need this. So please make this happen, and yeah, as soon as possible, basically. Then another thing is like Stricken, just in general, Rift Guardian scaling. So there's like a few points here that go together. Most builds, especially the top builds for solo pushing, are extremely bad on Rift Guardians, and you have, you know, upwards of like, you know, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 minute Rift Guardian fights, depending on which build you play, depending on how far you push. It should never be longer than 4 minutes, I believe. You know, this should be like the absolute maximum. So we could see a huge buff to Stricken. We could see a Stricken rework where, you know, it always applies to the Rift Guardian or elites when you fight multiple enemies, because you have some ad bosses that are really hard to kill, like Choker or Parendi, because you constantly get ads and they take the Stricken stacks when you attack. Or you have yeah, just simply too long Rift Guardian fights. So the Stricken is not good enough. It really benefits the fast attacking builds. It is really bad for some builds of slow weapons. And while I do like that, you know, kind of gives you a bit more of an option of, you know, stacking attack speed versus stacking area damage, for example. I think that the current mechanics are simply outdated. The Rift Guardians are, you know, too boring, too long. The Rift Guardian fights themselves could maybe be juiced up a bit, you know, maybe there could be more elite affixes they have, or there could be even like more ads spawning. Maybe every Rift Guardian has ads, and maybe they spawn elites that you can defeat and you get area damage from. I don't know, stuff like this. I think that would be amazing to just make Rift Guardians a bit more interesting. And then also having a string encounter would be cool. Maybe like on the health bar or like right under it or something. That's also quite interesting. Also, crafting needs a rework. I made a video about this recently. It's way too slow. It's really boring. It's really annoying. So I think a quick and easy fix for this would be to add a hotkey where you can use the currently selected recipe again with the item that you mouse over, and you just press the button and it will, you know, for example, when you have reforge, it will just reforge with one button, and then it will reforge again with the next button. Or when you upgrade rare and you have a full inventory of yellow one-handed crossbows, you go from one to the next and just press the button 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And like this you can, you know, just fast upgrade, because it's horrible to wait. You have to, you know, wait out the animations, or you do like some, you know, convoluted like 5 clicks to speed up by like a second or two. But yeah, it's really bad. So this needs to be changed, I believe. Also, what I would really like is a close and restart Greater Rift button. So this has been, well, requested since season 1, I guess. It's still not here. Please, Blizzard. We are waiting for it. So, you know, when you're fishing, like even just 100 keys, you know, for people that don't push super crazy, but it's not rare for people to just restart games, because, well, most Greater Rifts suck when you're pushing. You need to have a good map, you need to have good monster types, and it will just, you know, make everything a lot more bearable when we could just restart a game in like a second instead of 20 or 30 seconds by making a new game every time. And just in general, also talking about RNG, pylons, why can we not just have all 5 pylons in the Rift? Why can we not have like a bit more streamlined RNG maybe? So especially in a season that is about pylons with shadow clones, I don't really see why in some rifts you only get 2, and in the other rifts you get 4. I think it would be cool to kind of like have a guarantee to get every pylon, and that would also, you know, go well with the next season too. Yeah. So this is about it for my feedback here. So there's definitely more ideas, more suggestions that you can make, especially for like the long-term future. But this is what I wanted to share here. In the end, it got quite long, I guess, but this is what it is. It has been a very long PTR, very like, you know, many new builds, many things I tried, and also just, you know, just in general. Let me know what you think. Maybe you have your own ideas for certain builds. Maybe you have your own ideas for some quality of life features, something I missed. I don't know. I would be kind of curious to see what is also your opinion. Maybe we can get some like last minute changes and get some attention from Blizzard here, and then we'll see what happens in season 22. But anyway, I believe that the next season is looking great no matter what. And if there's going to be like some changes, and, you know, at least some number changes, you know, something like zombie bears, something like the Ronans, the Hammerden, maybe the Frozen Orb, you know, most of these are just numbers changes in terms of like the overall balancing. And then we could have maybe some mechanical changes to something like the Twister or you know, some other builds. So I think the numbers changes especially should not be a big deal, and could also make for a better balance for the future. So I hope you enjoyed my thoughts here, and let me know what you have to share, and I'll see you guys next time.